I found the photographs in my grandfather's attic 3 days after his funeral. They were tucked inside an old shoebox, buried beneath moth-eaten blankets and yellowed newspapers from 1952. 23 black and white photographs of strangers I'd never seen before, and one photograph of my grandfather looking terrified. My name is Claire Hartley. I'm 29 years old, a freelance journalist living in Boston. My grandfather, Thomas Hartley, died at 87 in a nursing home, his mind gone to Alzheimer's years before his body finally gave out. We weren't close. He'd always been distant, haunted by something he never talked about. My mother said he'd been in the Navy during the Korean War and came back different, broken in ways that never healed. I was helping my mother clean out his house when I found the box. She was downstairs sorting through kitchen items, and I was alone in the attic, sweating in the August heat, when my hand closed around the shoebox. The photographs were old, professional quality. Each one showed a different person, always the same composition, head and shoulders, neutral expression, stark lighting, like mugshots or passport photos. Written on the back of each one was a name, a date, and a location. Robert Chen, August 12, 1952, San Francisco. Margaret O'Sullivan, August 12, 1952, San Francisco. James Whitmore, August 12, 1952, San Francisco. All 23 photographs had the same date, the same city, August 12, 1952. The 24th photograph showed my grandfather. He was young, maybe 25. His face was pale, his eyes wide with something that looked like terror. On the back, Thomas Hartley, August 13, 1952, San Francisco. 1 day later than all the others. I brought the box downstairs. "Mom, look at this." She was wrapping china in newspaper, her face drawn with exhaustion. She glanced at the photographs and went very still. "Where did you find these?" "The attic. Do you know who these people are?" She set down the plate she'd been holding. Her hands were shaking. "Your grandfather never talked about San Francisco. Never. The one time I asked him about it when I was a teenager, he locked himself in his room for 2 days. What happened in San Francisco? I don't know. He never told me. Your grandmother said he had nightmares about it until the day she died. Would wake up screaming about passengers and a ship and something about not being able to leave." A chill ran down my spine despite the heat. A ship? That's all I know. "Claire, maybe we should just throw these away. Whatever happened, he clearly didn't want to talk about it. But I'm a journalist. Mystery is my business. Can I keep them? I want to look into this." She hesitated, then nodded. "Just be careful. Some things are buried for a reason." Back in Boston, I started researching. August 12, 1952, San Francisco. I went through newspaper archives, historical records, maritime logs. For 3 days, I found nothing. No major events, no accidents, no incidents involving those names. Then I found it. A small article in the San Francisco Chronicle, buried on page 7. The headline read, "24 Missing After Ferry Incident." The article was brief. 24 passengers reported missing after the ferry Golden Gate departed from Pier 41 yesterday evening. The ferry arrived at Sausalito on schedule, but witnesses report the passenger deck was empty upon docking. The Coast Guard has launched an investigation. Authorities are baffled as there were no distress signals and the crew insists all passengers disembarked normally. 24 passengers. I had 24 photographs, and I had my grandfather's photo dated 1 day later. I needed to know more. I booked a flight to San Francisco. The Golden Gate Ferry Company still existed, though it was under different ownership now. I called ahead, explained I was researching a historical incident for an article. The office manager, a woman named Patricia, agreed to meet with me. "The 1952 incident," she said when I sat down in her cramped office overlooking the bay. "You're not the first person to ask about it. Every few years, someone gets curious, usually around the anniversary. What can you tell me about it?" She pulled out a file. "Not much more than what's in the newspapers. 24 passengers got on the ferry at Pier 41 at 6:30 p.m. The crossing takes about 20 minutes. When the ferry docked in Sausalito at 6:58 p.m., the deck was empty. The crew, 3 people, all insisted they'd watched the passengers disembark normally, but witnesses on the dock said nobody got off."
How is that possible? It isn't. That's why it's a mystery. She leaned back. Here's the weird part. The crew all quit within a month, refused to ever talk about it. One of them, the captain, moved to Alaska and lived alone until he died in 1979. The other 2 died in the 60s. None of them ever gave a coherent explanation. What did they say happened? Different things, contradictory things. The captain said the passengers got off normally. The deckhand said they all went into the cabin and never came out. The engineer said he heard singing coming from below deck, but there was nothing below deck except machinery. I showed her the photographs. "Do you have passenger records? Names of who was on the ferry?" Her expression changed. "How did you get these?" "They belonged to my grandfather, Thomas Hartley. He was there." She stared at the photos for a long moment. Then she opened her desk drawer and pulled out a document, a passenger manifest from August 12, 1952. Every name on the backs of my photographs was on that list. "Your grandfather's name isn't here," Patricia said. "His photo is dated August 13th, the day after." "Then he wasn't one of the passengers, so how did he get these photos?" That was the question, wasn't it? Patricia made copies of everything for me. As I was leaving, she said, "There's one more thing. The ferry itself was scrapped in 1965, cut up for parts, but there are people who claim they still see it sometimes, late at night, crossing the bay, empty." "Ghost stories?" I said. "Maybe, but there's a retired dock worker named Henry Chen who lives in Sausalito. He was working the night it happened. He's 93 now, but his mind is sharp. If you want to know what really happened, he might be able to tell you." I found Henry Chen in a nursing home overlooking the bay. He was tiny, shrunken with age, but his eyes were bright and alert. When I told him why I was there, he nodded slowly. "I knew someone would come eventually. They always do, sooner or later. The ferry remembers." "The ferry remembers?" "Sit down. I'll tell you what I saw, what I've never told anyone, because they'd think I was crazy." I sat. He stared out the window at the bay, gathering his thoughts. "I was 22 years old, working the dock. The Golden Gate came in right on schedule that night. I was standing there with my clipboard, ready to check off the passengers as they disembarked. The ferry pulled up, the gangplank went down, and..." He trailed off. "And?" "Nothing. Nobody got off. I could see them through the windows, standing on the deck, 24 people, just standing there, not moving, not talking, just staring straight ahead. The captain came down, white as a sheet. He said they'd all gotten off. I told him no, they were still on the ferry. He turned around, looked, and screamed. Why? Because he could see them too now. Before he said they'd been invisible, but now they were visible again, and they were all looking at him, looking at all of us, with these empty eyes, like they were there but not there, present but absent. My skin was crawling. What happened next? The captain ran back onto the ferry, told them they had to leave, started physically trying to push them toward the exit, but they wouldn't move, couldn't move maybe. They just stood there, and then one of them spoke, a woman. She said, "We can't leave. We're the passengers who never left." What does that mean? I don't know. But the captain, he started screaming at them, and that's when they started moving. Not toward the exit, toward him. All 24 of them, walking in unison. And they weren't walking right. They were gliding, floating. Their feet weren't touching the deck. Henry's hands were shaking. Even 70 years later, the memory terrified him. The captain fell backward off the ferry, broke his arm. We pulled him onto the dock. The deckhand and engineer came running out. We all stood there watching as those 24 people just faded, became transparent, and then they were gone, just gone. But the ferry, it felt wrong after that. Heavy, cold, like something was still on it, even though we couldn't see anything. Did anyone investigate? Oh, they investigated. Coast Guard, police, but what were they going to say? That ghost passengers appeared and disappeared? They blamed the crew, said they must have let the passengers off somewhere else, or that the passengers never existed. But I saw them. I saw them with my own eyes. My grandfather, I said, Thomas Hartley. He wasn't on the passenger list, but he had photographs of all of them. Henry went very still. Thomas Hartley. Yes, I remember him. He came to the dock the next day, August 13th, asked questions, took photographs of everyone who'd been working that night. He said he was from the Navy, investigating, but he wasn't, was he? I don't know what he was. He spent 3 hours talking to the captain, private conversation, nobody else allowed. When he left, the captain was crying, and then Thomas came to me, asked me what I'd seen. I told him, and he said something I've never forgotten. What? He said, they're not gone. They're still on the ferry. They'll always be on the ferry. Some crossings never end. I left Henry and sat in my rental car overlooking the bay. The sun was setting, painting the water gold and red. Ferries crisscrossed the bay, full of tourists and commuters, everyone going about their normal lives. But somewhere out there, according to Henry, there was another ferry, one that never stopped running, one that still carried 24 passengers who couldn't leave. I needed to know more about my grandfather. What had he been doing there? Why had he taken those photographs? Back in Boston, I went through the rest of his belongings more carefully, found a journal tucked behind books in his study. My mother must have missed it. The entries were sparse, scattered across years, but they painted a picture. August 15, 1952. They're still there. I can feel them. The crossing never ended for them. They're trapped in the space between departure and arrival, in the liminal place. I tried to help them. God help me, I tried. September 3rd, 1952. Went back to the bay tonight. Could see the ferry. Translucent, flickering, the passengers standing on deck. They see me, they always see me. They're calling for help, but I can't reach them. October 12th, 1952. I understand now. They're not ghosts, they're echoes, trapped in a loop. The ferry left San Francisco, but never arrived in Sausalito. Not really. It's still making that crossing, over and over, forever. And they're aware. God, they're aware. November 1st, 1952. I have to stop going back. It's destroying me. Every time I see them, I hear them calling, help us, let us off, end the crossing. But I can't. Nobody can. They're beyond help, beyond salvation. They're passengers who will never arrive. The entries stopped after that, but stuck between the pages was a photograph I'd missed before. It showed the ferry at night, dark water, dark sky, and on the deck, barely visible, translucent figures, 24 of them, standing in a circle. In the center of the circle was a 25th figure, darker, more solid. I looked closer. It wasn't human. The proportions were wrong. Too tall, too thin, arms too long. Written on the back, The Ferryman, August 12th, 1952. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped the photograph. I spent the next week obsessing over this, barely slept, barely ate. I researched everything I could find about maritime disappearances, liminal spaces, folklore about ferries and crossings, and I found a pattern. Every 10 to 15 years, there were reports of strange incidents on ferries in San Francisco Bay. Always at night, always the same description. Passengers who seemed off, who wouldn't leave, who disappeared. 1967, 3 passengers vanished from a ferry, never found. 1981, an entire ferry crew reported seeing shadow passengers before all resigning. 1996, a tourist photographed something on a late-night ferry. The photograph showed translucent figures standing on the deck. It was dismissed as a double exposure. 2011, a ferry captain reported the ship felt heavy during a crossing, like it was carrying more weight than it should. When they docked, he counted the passengers. There were 24 more than there should have been. Then they were gone.
24. Always 24. I knew what I had to do. I had to go back to San Francisco. Had to take the ferry. Had to see for myself. My mother begged me not to. "Claire, this isn't healthy. You're obsessing. Your grandfather spent his whole life haunted by whatever happened. Don't let it haunt you too." "I have to know," I said. I flew back to San Francisco on August 10th, 2 days before the anniversary. I spent those 2 days preparing, bought a good camera, a voice recorder, made sure my phone was charged. I wasn't just going to look, I was going to document everything. August 12th arrived, the anniversary. I went to Pier 41 at 6 p.m., bought a ticket for the 6:30 ferry to Sausalito. The sun was setting as I boarded. The ferry was maybe half full, tourists taking photos, commuters staring at their phones. Everything normal. We departed on schedule. I stood on the deck, watching San Francisco recede. The Golden Gate Bridge glowed in the fading light. The water was choppy, dark. 10 minutes into the crossing, I felt it. A change in the air, a heaviness. The temperature dropped 15 degrees in seconds. The other passengers didn't seem to notice, but I did. I looked around the deck, and I saw them. They were translucent at first, barely there, standing among the living passengers like overlays, like double exposures in old photographs. 24 figures. They solidified slowly, became more real, more present. I could see their faces now, recognized them from the photographs. Robert Chen, Margaret O'Sullivan, James Whitmore, all of them. They were looking at me. One of them, a middle-aged woman in a 1950s dress, stepped forward. Her mouth moved. No sound came out, but I understood her anyway. "Help us." I raised my camera, took a photograph. The flash seemed to hurt them. They recoiled, flickering. "What happened to you?" I asked. The woman pointed. I turned. At the far end of the deck, standing in the shadows, was the figure from my grandfather's photograph. The ferryman. Tall, impossibly tall, wearing something that might have been a uniform but wasn't quite right. The face was wrong, elongated, empty. It was looking at me. I ran, didn't think, just ran, back toward the cabin, toward the other passengers, toward the light and the noise and the living. Behind me, I heard footsteps, not running, walking, steady, relentless. I burst into the cabin. The tourists looked up, startled. I must have looked insane. "Can't you see them?" I shouted. "They're right there." Everyone stared at me. One man said, "Lady, are you okay?" I turned around. The deck behind me was empty. No translucent figures, no ferrymen, just normal darkness and normal water. "I saw them," I whispered. "I saw them." The ferry docked in Sausalito. I stumbled off, legs shaking. As I walked down the gangplank, I looked back. They were there.
all 24 of them, standing on the deck, watching me leave. And behind them, the ferryman, its two long arms reaching out, herding them, keeping them together. They couldn't leave. They were passengers who never left, trapped forever in the crossing, in the space between departure and arrival. The ferry pulled away, heading back to San Francisco. I watched it go, and I understood what my grandfather had understood. Some crossings never end. Some journeys never arrive. They're still out there, still making that journey, still trapped. And the ferryman makes sure of it. My name is Claire Hartley. I'm 29 years old. I saw the passengers who never left. And every night I dream I'm on that ferry, standing on the deck, feeling the cold air, watching the lights of San Francisco fade behind me. And I know that one day, maybe, I won't wake up from that dream. One day, I'll be one of them, a passenger who never left, still crossing.